frontal, parietal, occipital bone, temporal, zygomatic, nasal, maxilla, coronal suture, sagittal suture, lambdoidal suture, squamosal suture, internasal suture, intermaxillary suture, temporal lines, frontal squama, glabella, superciliary ridge, supraorbital foramen, infraorbital foramen, lacrimal bone, lacrimal duct. In the eye orbit, there's 3 openings. There's a round optic foramen, and then there's 2 slits. An upper slit called the superior orbital fissure, and a lower slit called the inferior orbital fissure. In the nasal cavity, we have our nasal septum. The top part is the perpendicular plate of the ethmoid. The bottom is the vomer. We have 2 nasal conchae, inferior nasal conchae, middle nasal conchae, intermaxillary suture, intranasal suture, nasal bones, alveolar margin of the maxilla, zygomaticofacial foramen. Over here on this side, we have our squamosal suture, temporal squama, mastoid process, externoacoustic meatus, styloid process, zygomatic arch, temporal process of the zygomatic bone, zygomatic process of the temporal bone. In here, we have our ethmoid bone. This is our chrysogale, cribiform plate. The holes in here are olfactory foramina. This is our sphenoid bone. These are our lesser wings, greater wings, foramen rotundum, sella turcica, optic chiasm, anterior clinoid process, posterior clinoid process, dorsum celli, hypophyseal fossa where the pituitary gland sits, carotid groove, petrous portion, internal acoustic meatus, petrous portion, internal acoustic meatus, anterior, middle, and posterior cranial fossa, incisive foramen, median palatine suture, transverse palatine suture, palatine process of the maxilla, horizontal plate of the palatine, greater and lesser palatine foramen, vomer, pterygoid process, mandibular fossa, foramen ovale, foramen spinosum, foramen lacerum, carotid canal, jugular foramen, styloid process, mastoid process, stylomastoid foramen, occipital condyles, foramen magnum, hypoglossal canal, nucolines, external occipital protuberance. Okay. This is the mandible, alveolar margin of the mandible, mental foramen, condyloid process, coronoid process, mandibular notch, mandibular angle, mandibular ramus, mandibular foramen, mylohyoid line.